we have heard that African governments are not investing in infrastructure. They're not investing in human capital. They're not investing in agriculture. They're not investing in in improving the business environment. But I think the question is why? Why are they not doing that? Is it because they don't know that these things are important for sustained growth and for employment and for poverty reduction for over 50 years? I think they know. I think this is pretty much what people know. So I think it's high time for us to ask the question, why is it that after such a long time, each time we come together, we're still asking the same questions. We're still presenting the same issues, that these are the problems. Is it because we are identifying the symptoms rather than the root causes of the problem? Or we have not paid sufficient attention to what could be the non-economic variables that are critically important? And I will give you some examples. It is well known, leadership is already, I think there's an agreement that show me an African country that is doing well, and I will show you a leader who is either visionary or who is capable and who is able to really mobilize the population to do the right things. Institutions are also in that category. But are we asking sufficient questions about how this kind of visionary leadership can emerge? Let me give you a very critical example. Democratization, contested politics, and party politics is what is happening across the continent today. But what we have forgotten is that when a party wins an election, it is whatever plan they have that becomes national plan. Have we asked the question, in the party mechanism, do you have enough capacity to be able to have the kind of economic policies that will lead to sustainable growth and that will lead to employment and to poverty reduction? As economists, are we looking at this from an economic standpoint? I don't think we are. And so this is one issue. Number two is, if you go beyond the party politics and talk about institutions, which everybody agrees is a problem, how do we create the institutions that are going to be functional and are going to be growth and employment friendly, and that will be poverty reducing, or sustain the ones that are there, or even strengthen the ones that are there? Another question is, if you look at the human capital that is being talked about, why is it year in, year out, we're saying the African universities are not educating African youth for Africa's needs? And so you have graduates who are neither employable nor self-employable. But why? Why is the case? What is it that is happening here? Last question is, if we look at how African countries have moved overall, it is important. This is why I think contextual issues are very important and history is extremely important. The way we're talking about industrialization in Africa, it seems like Africa never made any attempt to industrialize in the past. In fact, there were some pretty success stories right after independence and in the 70s, before the crisis came and the massive deindustrialization that took place. We could argue what the sources are, whether it is the introduction of some other policies or so on and so forth. But one important thing, and a second example, is African countries spend a lot of energy and resources pursuing aid. But when you look at equity capital, you look at remittances, you look at investment flows, you look at the recovery of illicit financial flows, and you look at natural resource revenues, all these things are far bigger than aid. But the structures and the investments put in pursuing aid is something that is mind-boggling why that is the case. So the issue of mindset, in my view, comes center square. It may sound like it's superfluous, but I do, based on experience of how many years now, believe that development is not just simply getting the policies right or making the right investments. It's also an issue of mindset, that the people actually have to believe that they actually are capable of generating development for themselves and not constantly thinking about policies other people are going to bring to them, sometimes which are not to their best advantage. Last point, so I've raised these questions so that is something that we should reflect upon and think about as we move forward. Why Africans are not investing enough in human capital, why Africans are not paying attention to the economic dimensions of party politics, why are we not thinking about how to create and sustain institutions, And how do we ensure that our universities educate African youth for the benefit of Africa? The last point I'll make is as follows. I was having a discussion with a Chinese friend of mine, and he said to me, it occurs to me that when you discuss development challenges in Africa, the issue is to talk about everything that's going wrong, everything that's not working. That you have there's political instability, you don't have democracy, you don't have infrastructure, you don't have this, you don't have that. As if to say that the idea is the only way you can develop is if you get all these things solved. If you were to address these constraints, that you will be able to develop. But he said, no, we didn't think about it this way. What we thought about is, what is working? Where can we begin? Let's start from what is working and build from there. Because if you look around, you know that there are things working, no matter which country you're talking about. Even Somalia, there are things that are working in the private sector. So that one can begin to see things from that point of view, instead of thinking about making sure that we deal with all the constraints before we can bring about development.